Good evening. Today we'll discuss about the uh, indigo plantation and what was the revolt about the indigo plantation. So before I begin, I just want to recap what I've already covered in the previous lecture. So I've talked about the year 1765 when the British East India Company, they became the divans of the Bengal, and once for all, after getting the Diwani rights of the Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha, how the revenue problem was solved, and later on we saw that how various set of revenue system was brought. For example, Rayotwadi, Mahalwari system, and the entire idea was to increase the revenue of the Bengal, and we saw that when the Nawabs were there, how they were bone of contention for the Britishers. But later on, when they become the Diwan, how they control the economy of the Bengal, and with the malpractices and with the whatever the policies they brought, they were able to increase the revenue for the Bengal. And now in this chapter, indigo plants, if I talk about the indigo plants, so they were primarily grown into the tropics, okay. And in Indian indigo was being used by cloth manufacturers in Italy, France, and Britain to dye the cloth. So however, only small amount of Indian indigo reached the European market, and its price was very high. Because the price was very high, so it was not able to reach to the European market, and because of that, the European cloth manufacturers, they had to depend on the another plant called woad to make a wallet and blue dyes. And later we see that by the end of the uh, 18th century, Britain began to industrialize and its cotton production expanded dramatically, creating an enormous new demand for the cloth dyes because the cotton product was being made. So because of that, the cloth dye became into huge demand, and between 1783 and 89, the production of the indigo in the world fell by half. And then we also see that the indigo cultivation also uh, expanded in Bengal. As I mentioned previously also, that since after getting the Diwani rights of Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha in 1765, um, because of that, what has happened, that because they wanted to increase the revenue for the uh, Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha, so in Bengal they started the indigo cultivation, because as I mentioned that the indigo which was being cultivated, the finished product was going to the England, and that is the reason out of which these Britishers or the British East India Company was getting the revenue. And we also see that as the indigo trade grew, commercial agents and officials of the company began investing in the indigo production. They did huge investment into the indigo production. And then the NCERT talks about the process of the indigo cultivation. So there were two main systems of the indigo cultivation. One was the niche, and another was the Ryoti. So we'll see first, what was the problem with the niche cultivation. So, and the niche cultivation was nothing but the land. He either bought the land or rented it from the other zamindars, I mean the tillers or the peasants, okay, and they produce indigo by directly employing hired laborers. So, what was the problem with the niche cultivation? The planters found it difficult to expand the area under the niche cultivation. Indigo could be cultivated only on the fertile lands, and these were all already densely populated. Um so because they were in especially in the Indian soil at that point of time, rice, wheat, those crops were being also grown, okay. So because of and they were already densely populated, so because of that, growing indigo in much bigger amount was very difficult. So the problem which the planters were facing was that they needed large areas in the compact blocks to cultivate the indigo in plantation. Okay, but then the land was very less, or the land was not increasing. So what they did is they attempted to lease in the land around the indigo factory and evict the peasants from the area. So they started taking land on the lease. Okay, and they started the eviction of the peasants who belonged to those land. And then niche cultivation on a large scale also required many plows and bullocks. One big of the indigo cultivation required two plows. This meant that the planter with the 1000 bighas would need 2000 plows. Investing on the purchase and maintenance of the plow was a big problem. Nor could the supplies be easily got from the peasants, since their plows and bullocks were busy on their rice field, again exactly at the time that the indigo planters needed them. So at one point of time, there was the cultivation of the rice and essential livestock, for example, wheat, rice and barley. And then at the same time they also wanted the indigo cultivation to be flourished. Okay, but at that point of time there was no farm machinery, so they have to make use of the plows and bullocks only. And so this was a huge challenge for the planters. So indigo on the land of Ryots. So what was happening on the land of Ryots? So under the Ryots system, the planters forced the Ryots to sign a contract and agreement. At times they pressurized the village headmen to sign the contract on behalf of the Ryots. So those who signed the contract got the cash advances from the planters at low rates of interest to produce indigo, but the loan committed to the Ryot to cultivating indigo on at least 25% of the area under holding. Okay, so for example, if they were having 100 acres of the land, so on the 25 acres of the land, they were supposed to cultivate the indigo. Okay, now what was the problem with the indigo cultivation? The planter provided the seed and the drill, while the cultivators prepared the soil, sowed the seed and looked after the crop. So, and this is a step given for the preparation of the indigo. This is not so important. So there was lots of labors and effort was required in the indigo cultivation. So later on we see that when the crops were delivered to the planters after the harvest, a new loan was given to the Ryot and the cycle started all over again. So what was the thing that they were being given? The planters, they use the bait method, where they used to give loan to the cultivators, and every time the cycle ended they used to give the new loans so that the peasants can grow the indigo plant. So there were other problems too. The planters usually insisted that indigo be cultivated on the best soils in which the peasant preferred to cultivate rice. Okay, so the best soil was used for cultivation of the rice, but they also wanted they wanted that the indigo to be also grown into the best soil. Indigo has moreover had deep roots and it exhausted the soil rapidly. So wherever the indigo was being grown, the harvest capacity of the land was also decreasing, because once an indigo is being is cultivated there, the rice cannot grow there. So next is the Blue Rebellion. And after, what was the Blue Rebellion? So in March 1859, thousands of Ryots in Bengal refused to grow indigo. As the rebellion spread, Ryots refused to pay rents to the planters and attacked the indigo factories, armed with swords and spears, bowls and arrows. And even the gomasts, the agents of the planters who came to collect rent, were beaten up. So there were agents who used to collect the rent from them. They were also beaten black and blue. And in many villages, headmen who had been forced to sign indigo contracts mobilized the indigo peasants and fought pitched battles with the lathials. Okay, so lathials were nothing but the bodyguards of these indigo cultivators, not the cultivators, but those, big people or big man who were, forcing these people to cultivate the indigo. So in the after the revolt of 1857, the British government was particularly worried about the possibility of the another popular rebellion. So when the news spread of seminary revolt in the Indigo district, so there was a lieutenant who actually went Ashley Garden. He issued a notice stating that the Ryots would not be compelled to accept indigo contracts, and that Queen Victoria had declared that the indigo need not to be sown. And then there was one commission also which was being established, and the commission inquired into the system of indigo production. The commission held the planters guilty and criticized them for the corrosive method they used with the indigo cultivators, and it declared that the indigo production was not profitable for the Ryots. The commission asked the Ryots to fulfill their existing contract, but also told them that they could refuse to produce indigo in the future. And then we see that after this blue revolution or indigo revolution, the indigo production collapsed in Bengal, and when Mahatma Gandhi returned, and basically the British capitalist mindset, they shifted their focus from Bengal to the Bihar. Okay, and with the discovery of the synthetic dyes in the late 19th century, their business was severely affected. And then we see that when Mahatma Gandhi returned from the South Africa, and peasant from the Bihar persuaded him to visit Champaran and see the plight of the indigo cultivators there. So which means that the indigo was cultivated in Bengal also, and it was cultivated in Bihar also. So Mahatma Gandhi visits in 1917 marked the beginning of the Champaran movement against the indigo planters. So that's all for today's lecture, and I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Please like, subscribe and share this lecture.